Did you know that in 40 years of Navy SEAL operations, only 3 missions have been completely erased from official records? What you're about to hear is the story of one of those missions, and why a dying veteran chose to break his sacred oath of silence. My name is Commander Jake Ironside Patterson. You're watching Razor Edge. Before we dive into this classified revelation, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This channel is built on Brotherhood. We stand together, we learn together, and we honor the warriors who've paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Your subscription helps us continue sharing these untold stories of sacrifice and valor. At 67 years old, Master Chief Petty Officer Marcus "Ghost" Kellerman sits in a sterile hospital room in San Diego, California. The same hands that once gripped an HK-416 in the darkness of enemy territory now shake as they hold a digital recorder. Stage 4. Pancreatic cancer has given him 6 weeks to live, and 40 years of carrying the military's darkest secret has finally become too heavy a burden. But the story Marcus is about to tell officially never happened. The fluorescent lights above cast harsh shadows across Marcus's weathered face as he stares at the recorder. 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Navy Cross earned over 28 years of service. But none of those decorations tell the real story. The scars running down his left arm aren't from the helicopter crash in Grenada that's listed in his official record. They're from something much worse. "I've kept this secret for 40 years, Marcus whispers into the device, his voice carrying the weight of decades. "But I'm dying, and the families deserve to know the truth about what really happened to their sons, the truth about Operation Neptune's shadow." Marcus closes his eyes and his mind travels back to November 15, 1984. Reagan was president, the Cold War was at its peak, and SEAL Team 6 was still the military's most classified unit. Marcus was 37 years old then, a seasoned operator with 15 years of special operations under his belt. But nothing had prepared him for what was coming. The briefing room at Dam Neck Naval Base was colder than usual that November morning. 6 men sat around a steel table, each one hand-picked for what their commanding officer called the most critical mission in SEAL Team 6 history. Marcus remembers every detail: the smell of black coffee, the sound of rain against the windows, and the way his best friend Danny "Reaper" Morrison cracked his knuckles when he was nervous. Danny had been Marcus's swim buddy since Bud S training 12 years earlier. They'd served together in Lebanon, Grenada, and a dozen classified operations that would never make the history books. If Marcus was the ghost who moved through enemy territory unseen, Danny was the Reaper who made sure no one followed them home. But this mission would test their brotherhood in ways they never imagined. Captain William "Hawk" Stevens entered the briefing room carrying a red folder marked with classifications so high that even Marcus, with his top-secret clearance, had never seen them before. The tension in the room was immediate and electric. "Gentlemen," Stevens began, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd sent countless warriors into harm's way, "what I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room. As of this moment, you're all officially on a training exercise in the Chesapeake Bay." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Training exercises didn't require red folders. Stevens opened the classified file and spread satellite photographs across the table. The images showed a massive Soviet naval installation built into the cliffs of the Kola Peninsula, Severodvinsk Naval Base, home to the Soviet Union's most advanced submarine fleet. 72 hours ago, Stevens continued, a Pentagon courier was murdered in West Berlin. The briefcase he was carrying contained the complete technical specifications for our new Trident submarine navigation system, technology that could give the Soviets a decisive advantage in underwater warfare. Danny leaned forward, studying the photographs. "Sir, are we talking about a recovery mission?" Stevens's expression darkened. "We're talking about preventing World War III. The captain pointed to a specific building within the naval complex, a concrete structure built directly into the mountainside. Intelligence indicates the stolen technology is being analyzed here in what the Soviets call Building 7. Your mission is to infiltrate this facility, recover or destroy the stolen data, and extract without leaving any evidence of American involvement." Marcus studied the satellite images, his tactical mind already calculating approach routes and extraction points. The facility was surrounded by water on 3 sides, with patrol boats circling constantly. The only viable approach would be underwater, through the submarine pens themselves. It was a suicide mission disguised as a covert operation. "Sir," Marcus spoke up, his voice steady despite the growing dread in his chest. "What's our intelligence source on the location of this technology?" Stevens hesitated for just a moment, a pause so brief that most men would have missed it. But Marcus had spent 15 years reading the micro-expressions of commanding officers, and that hesitation told him everything he needed to know. Their intelligence was compromised. "The source is classified above your pay grade, Master Chief," Stevens replied, "but I can tell you it's been verified through multiple channels." Marcus exchanged a glance with Danny, who had caught the same tell. In the Brotherhood of Special Operations, you learn to trust your instincts above all else. And every instinct Marcus possessed was screaming that something was wrong with this mission. But orders were orders, and SEAL Team 6 didn't question orders. Stevens continued the briefing, outlining the insertion plan. They would approach via submarine using the USS Pittsburgh to get within 50 miles of Soviet territorial waters. From there, they would transfer to a specially modified SEAL delivery vehicle, essentially a miniature submarine designed to carry a 6-man team through enemy waters undetected. The timeline was aggressive. Insertion at 0200 hours, infiltration of Building 7 by 0400, mission completion by 0600, and extraction before dawn. They would have less than 4 hours to penetrate one of the most heavily defended naval installations in the Soviet Union. "What about backup?" asked Petty Officer First Class Tommy Bulldog Rodriguez, the team's explosives expert. Stevens's answer chilled the room. "There is no backup. If you're compromised, you're on your own. The United States government will deny any knowledge of this operation." Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He'd led men into impossible situations before, but never with stakes this high. If they failed, the Soviets would gain a technological advantage that could shift the balance of the Cold War. If they were captured, it could trigger the nuclear conflict everyone feared. But there was something else bothering Marcus. Something about the way Stevens avoided eye contact when discussing their intelligence source. The briefing concluded with the distribution of specialized equipment. Soviet-made weapons to maintain plausible deniability, underwater breathing apparatus rated for Arctic waters, and explosive charges designed to leave no forensic evidence. Each man would carry enough firepower to level a city block, but their primary weapon would be stealth. As the team filed out of the briefing room, Danny grabbed Marcus's arm. "Ghost, something's not right about this one." Marcus nodded grimly. "I know, but we've got our orders. Since when do we get orders that feel like a setup?" It was a question that would haunt Marcus for the next 40 years. That evening, Marcus sat in his quarters writing what he thought might be his final letter to his wife, Sarah. They'd been married for 8 years, and she'd learned not to ask questions when he disappeared for weeks at a time. But this felt different. This felt final. He never sent the letter. At 2300 hours, the 6-man team boarded the USS Pittsburgh under cover of darkness. Captain Stevens was there to see them off, and Marcus noticed something in the older man's eyes, something that looked almost like regret. "Bring them home, Master Chief," Stevens said, shaking Marcus's hand. "Always do, sir," Marcus replied, though the words felt hollow in his mouth. As the submarine pulled away from the dock, Marcus stood on the deck watching the lights of Virginia Beach disappear into the darkness. Danny joined him, both men silent as they contemplated what lay ahead. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Danny finally said. "What's that?" "Remember that mission in Lebanon, when we had to extract that CIA asset from Beirut?" Marcus nodded. It had been a textbook operation, clean insertion, successful extraction, 0 casualties. "The intelligence was perfect that time," Danny continued. "Every detail, every timing, every contingency. This feels different." Marcus knew his friend was right, but they were already committed. The submarine was heading toward Soviet waters, and in 18 hours, they would either complete the most important mission of their careers or die trying. What Marcus didn't know was that their fate had already been decided by someone sitting in an office 3,000 miles away, someone who had already sold them out before they'd even left American waters. The USS Pittsburgh cut through the dark Atlantic waters at flank speed, carrying 6 Navy SEALs toward what would become the most classified disaster in special operations history. In the submarine's cramped quarters, Marcus reviewed the mission parameters one final time, unaware that every detail of their operation had already been transmitted to Moscow. The betrayal had begun long before they'd ever entered that briefing room. And in less than 24 hours, Marcus would be forced to make a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A choice between saving his best friend and protecting a secret that could destroy everything he'd sworn to defend. But first, they had to survive the insertion. The USS Pittsburgh's sonar operator detected the first Soviet patrol vessel at 0147 hours, 13 minutes before the planned insertion. Marcus felt the submarine's engines throttle down as Captain Reynolds maneuvered them into the shadow of an underwater ridge just outside Soviet territorial waters. "Master Chief," the submarine's XO whispered, "we've got a problem." Marcus made his way to the sonar station, where green lines danced across the screen like electronic ghosts. What he saw made his blood run cold. Not one patrol vessel, but 7. The Soviets had tripled their standard patrol pattern around Severodvinsk Naval Base. It was almost like they were expecting company. "Sir," the sonar operator reported, "I'm reading Krivaki-class frigates in a search pattern. They're running active sonar every 30 seconds. Danny appeared at Marcus's shoulder, studying the display. "That's not a patrol pattern, Ghost. That's a dragnet." Marcus's mind raced through the tactical implications. Active sonar meant the Soviets were actively hunting for something underwater. Standard patrol doctrine called for passive sonar to avoid detection. But active sonar meant they didn't care if anyone knew they were looking. The question was, what were they looking for? Captain Reynolds joined them at the sonar station, his face grim in the red light of the submarine's combat lighting. "Master Chief, I can get you within 2 miles of the insertion point, but no closer. Those frigates will detect us if we move into the bay." Marcus studied the tactical display, calculating distances and approach vectors. 2 miles underwater in Arctic conditions would push their SEAL delivery vehicle to its absolute limits. But they'd trained for worse. "We'll make it work, Captain," Marcus decided. "Prep the SDV for immediate launch." But as the team gathered their gear, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were swimming directly into a trap. The SEAL delivery vehicle was a cramped, torpedo-shaped submarine designed to carry 6 operators through enemy waters. At 22 feet long and weighing 4 tons, it was essentially an underwater taxi with enough life support for a 4-hour mission. Marcus took the pilot's position with Danny as navigator. The other 4 team members, Rodriguez, Petty Officer Chen, Petty Officer Jackson, and Petty Officer Williams, secured their gear in the vehicle's limited storage compartments. "Comms check," Marcus whispered into his throat mic. "Reaper, good to go. Bulldog, ready. Phoenix, standing by. Hammer, locked and loaded. Shark, ready to swim." At 0200 hours exactly, the USS Pittsburgh's torpedo tube doors opened and the SDV slipped into the black waters of the Barents Sea. The temperature outside was -2 degrees Celsius, cold enough to kill an unprotected human in minutes. Marcus engaged the vehicle's silent running mode, using battery power to minimize their acoustic signature. They had enough power for 3 hours of operation, which gave them exactly 0 margin for error. But 15 minutes into the approach, their mission parameters changed forever. "Ghost, I'm picking up underwater movement," Danny reported, studying the SDV's passive sonar display. "Bearing 090, range 800 meters. Marcus adjusted course slightly, trying to avoid whatever was moving through the water ahead of them. But as they got closer to the Soviet naval base, the contacts multiplied. "Jesus," Danny whispered. "There are submarines everywhere." Through the SDV's small viewing port, Marcus could see the running lights of Soviet submarines moving through the water like underwater constellations. But these weren't patrol boats. These were attack submarines, positioned in a defensive formation around the naval base. It was the largest underwater defensive screen Marcus had ever seen. "Reaper, how many contacts are you tracking?" 12. "No, 15. Ghost, I count at least 20 Soviet submarines in the water. This isn't normal patrol activity. Marcus felt his tactical instincts screaming warnings. In 15 years of special operations, he'd learned to trust the feeling when a mission felt wrong, and everything about this approach felt like they were swimming into an ambush. But they were already committed, and turning back wasn't an option. "All stations maintain radio silence," Marcus ordered. "We proceed as planned." What Marcus didn't know was that their every move was being tracked by Soviet sonar operators who had been expecting them for 3 days. The approach to Building 7 required navigating through the submarine pens of Severodvinsk Naval Base, a maze of concrete and steel that housed the Soviet Union's most advanced nuclear submarines. Marcus piloted the SDV through the underwater obstacles, using passive sonar to avoid the massive hulls of ballistic missile submarines. "Range to target 400 meters, Danny reported. Marcus could see the lights of the naval base through the water above them, a sprawling complex of buildings and docks carved into the Arctic coastline. Building 7 was located at the base of a cliff, accessible only through an underwater entrance that led to a flooded dock. "Bulldog, prep the charges," Marcus ordered. "We're going in hot." Rodriguez began arming the explosive devices they would use to destroy the stolen technology if they couldn't recover it. Each charge was designed to create maximum destruction while leaving minimal forensic evidence. But as they approached the entrance to Building 7, Marcus spotted something that made his blood freeze. "Danny, are you seeing this?" Through the SDV's viewing port, they could see Soviet naval infantry positioned around the underwater entrance to Building 7. Divers in full combat gear, armed with underwater assault rifles, waiting in defensive positions. They weren't just expected. They were anticipated. "Ghost!" Danny's voice was tight with tension. "This is a setup. We need to abort." Marcus stared at the Soviet divers, his mind racing through their options. They could abort the mission and return to the USS Pittsburgh, but that would mean the stolen technology remained in Soviet hands. They could attempt to fight their way through, but 6 SEALs against an entire naval base was suicide. Or they could try something that had never been attempted before. "All stations, new plan," Marcus announced. "We're going through the main submarine pen." The main submarine pen was a massive underwater cavern that housed the base's largest nuclear submarines. It was heavily guarded, constantly patrolled, and absolutely the last place anyone would expect an infiltration team to enter, which made it perfect. "Ghost, that's insane," Rodriguez protested over the comm. "The pen is crawling with security." "Exactly," Marcus replied. "They're watching Building 7. They're not watching their own submarines." Marcus piloted the SDV toward the main submarine pen, using a massive Typhoon-class ballistic missile submarine as cover. The submarine was over 500 feet long, large enough to hide their approach from the base's sonar operators. But as they moved into position, everything went wrong at once. A Soviet patrol diver spotted their SDV's wake and immediately triggered an underwater alarm. Suddenly, the water around them erupted with activity as Soviet naval infantry converged on their position. "Contact left!" Danny shouted as underwater bullets began striking the SDV's hull. Marcus pushed the vehicle's engines to maximum power, racing toward the submarine pen as Soviet divers closed in from all directions. The SDV's hull rang like a bell as rifle rounds bounced off its titanium armor. "Bulldog, we need a distraction," Marcus yelled. Rodriguez armed one of his explosive charges and ejected it from the SDV's rear compartment. The underwater explosion created a massive bubble of superheated gas that temporarily blinded the Soviet sonar operators. But it also announced their presence to every security force in the naval base. Marcus piloted the SDV into the submarine pen, just as klaxons began wailing throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the underwater cavern in red light as Soviet sailors scrambled to battle stations. "Phoenix, Hammer, Shark, prep for emergency insertion," Marcus ordered. "We're going in through the pen." The team began donning their diving gear, preparing to abandon the SDV and swim to the target. But as Marcus brought the vehicle alongside a concrete pier inside the submarine pen, he realized they had walked directly into the trap that had been set for them. Standing on the pier, waiting with a full company of Soviet naval infantry, was a man Marcus recognized from intelligence briefings, Colonel Viktor Petrov, the GRU's top counterintelligence operative. And he was smiling. "Reaper," Marcus whispered into his comm, "I think we've been sold out." Danny's response was grim. "Copy that, Ghost. What are your orders?" Marcus stared at the Soviet forces surrounding them, calculating odds and options. They were outnumbered 50-1, trapped in an underwater facility with no backup and no extraction plan. But they were Navy SEALs, and Navy SEALs never surrendered. "All stations," Marcus announced. "We complete the mission. Bulldog, how much explosive do we have left?" "Enough to level this entire pen, Ghost." Marcus made the hardest decision of his military career. "Then that's exactly what we're going to do." But as the team prepared to fight their way out of the submarine pen, Marcus had no idea that one of his own men wouldn't be coming home, and that the betrayal went deeper than anyone had imagined. The real enemy wasn't waiting in Moscow. The real enemy was sitting in an office in Washington, D.C., watching their every move on a classified satellite feed. Colonel Viktor Petrov's voice echoed through the submarine pen's underwater cavern as he spoke into a waterproof radio. But he wasn't speaking Russian. He was speaking perfect, unaccented English. "Blackbird Base, this is Red Fox. The package has been delivered as promised." Marcus felt his world shift as the implications hit him like a physical blow. Blackbird Base was a Pentagon code designation. Red Fox was communicating directly with someone in the American military command structure. They hadn't just been betrayed. They'd been sold out by their own people. "Ghost," Danny's voice crackled through the comm. "Did you copy that transmission?" "Copy, Reaper. We've got a bigger problem than we thought." Marcus watched through the SDV's viewing port as Petrov continued his conversation with whoever was on the other end of that radio. Soviet naval infantry maintained their positions around the submarine pen, but they weren't moving to capture the SEAL team. They were waiting for something. "Bulldog," Marcus whispered, "I need you to patch into that radio frequency." "Can you do it?" Rodriguez's fingers flew over his electronic warfare equipment. "Give me 30 seconds, Ghost." But 30 seconds was longer than they had. Suddenly, the water around the SDV erupted as Soviet combat divers dropped into the submarine pen from concealed positions. These weren't regular naval infantry. They were Spetsnaz, the Soviet Union's elite special forces. "Contact in the water," Chen shouted as the first underwater bullets struck their position. Marcus gunned the SDV's engines, ramming the vehicle directly into the concrete pier where Petrov was standing. The impact threw the Soviet colonel into the water and scattered his security detail, but it also cracked the SDV's pressure hull. "Emergency surface," Marcus ordered. "All hands, prepare for combat swimming." The team abandoned the damaged SDV and surfaced inside the submarine pen, immediately coming under fire from Soviet positions around the cavern. The water turned red as bullets churned the surface around them. But Marcus had spotted something that changed everything, a ventilation shaft leading directly into Building 7. "Reaper Phoenix, with me!" Marcus shouted over the gunfire. "Bulldog, Hammer, Shark, hold this position and cover our extraction." Marcus and Danny swam toward the ventilation shaft while Chen laid down suppressing fire with his underwater assault rifle. The shaft was barely large enough for a man to crawl through, but it was their only way into the target building. "Ghost, I'm picking up that radio transmission," Rodriguez reported through the comm. "You're not going to like what you hear." Marcus pulled himself into the ventilation shaft, with Danny close behind. "Put it through, Bulldog." What they heard confirmed Marcus's worst fears. The voice on the radio was unmistakably American, a Pentagon official Marcus didn't recognize, speaking directly to Colonel Petrov. "Red Fox, the operation is proceeding as planned. Eliminate the SEAL team and recover their bodies. The technology transfer will be completed once you have proof of their deaths." Danny grabbed Marcus's arm in the cramped ventilation shaft. "Ghost, they're not here to steal our technology. They're here to sell it." Marcus felt 28 years of military service crashing down around him. Someone in the Pentagon was using SEAL Team 6 as cover for the largest intelligence betrayal in American history. They'd been sent to die so that the real traitors could complete their transaction with the Soviets. But the transmission wasn't finished. "Understood, Blackbird Base," Petrov replied. "What about the sixth man?" The sixth man is not to be harmed. He has his orders. Marcus and Danny stared at each other in the darkness of the ventilation shaft. There were only 6 men on their team, which meant one of their own teammates was working for the enemy. "Reaper," Marcus whispered. "We've got a mole." But before Danny could respond, the ventilation shaft filled with tear gas. Marcus and Danny crawled through the burning chemical fog, their eyes streaming tears as they fought their way toward Building 7. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of intense combat as their teammates fought for their lives in the submarine pen. "Bulldog, report!" Marcus called into his comm. Rodriguez's voice came back strained. "We're taking heavy fire, Ghost. Hammer's been hit." "How bad?" "Bad. We need immediate extraction." Marcus reached the end of the ventilation shaft and kicked out the grating that led into Building 7. He dropped into a corridor lined with steel doors, each one marked with Cyrillic lettering and radiation warning symbols. This wasn't just a research facility. It was a nuclear weapons laboratory. "Danny, look at this," Marcus whispered, pointing to a door marked with American military designations. Inside the room, they found something that made their blood run cold. Complete technical specifications for every classified American weapons system developed in the past decade. Trident submarine navigation, stealth bomber radar signatures, satellite communication codes, everything. But the most shocking discovery was a stack of personnel files with photographs of every SEAL Team 6 operator, including detailed psychological profiles and family information. "Ghost," Danny's voice was hollow. "They've been planning this for years." Marcus opened his own personnel file and found something that made him sick, a detailed analysis of his leadership style, his decision-making patterns, and a prediction of exactly how he would react in this situation. They'd been studied, analyzed, and manipulated from the beginning. Suddenly, the door to the laboratory burst open, and Colonel Petrov entered with 2 Spetsnaz operators. But instead of raising his weapon, Petrov began to speak. "Master Chief Kellerman, Petty Officer Morrison, you're not supposed to be here." Marcus kept his rifle trained on the Soviet colonel. "Where are we supposed to be, Colonel?" "Dead," Petrov replied matter-of-factly. "Your government sent you here to die. I was supposed to kill you in the submarine pen and deliver your bodies as proof that the technology transfer was completed." Danny stepped forward, his weapon ready. "So why didn't you?" Petrov's expression was grim. "Because I'm not working for the Soviet Union, gentlemen. I'm working for the same people you are, and they've betrayed us all." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Petrov wasn't a Soviet agent. He was an American double agent who had been burned by his own handlers. "Explain," Marcus demanded. Petrov gestured to the stolen technology around them. "This entire operation is a setup. Someone in your Pentagon has been selling classified information to the highest bidder for years. The Soviets, the Chinese, anyone with enough money." "Then why the elaborate mission?" "Because the FBI was getting close to the truth. Your handlers needed a way to eliminate the evidence and anyone who might expose them. So they created Operation Neptune's Shadow, a mission designed to fail, with you as the fall guys." Marcus felt the pieces falling into place. The stolen technology was never stolen. It was sold. Exactly. And when you die here tonight, the official story will be that you were killed trying to recover it. Case closed. Investigation ended. But Danny had spotted something that changed everything. "Ghost, look at this." On Petrov's desk was a communication device displaying real-time locations of every member of their team. Someone was tracking them from inside their own unit. "Who's the mole, Colonel?" Marcus demanded. Petrov's answer shattered everything Marcus thought he knew about Brotherhood and loyalty. "Your communications specialist, Petty Officer Chen. He's been feeding information to my handlers for 18 months. Marcus felt his world collapse. Phoenix, Tommy Chen, had been with the team for 3 years. They'd saved each other's lives on a dozen missions. Marcus had been best man at Chen's wedding. "That's impossible," Danny protested. Petrov activated a recording device and Chen's voice filled the room. "Red Fox, this is Phoenix. The team is moving toward Building 7 as planned. Recommend you eliminate Rodriguez and Williams first. They're the most dangerous." Marcus grabbed his comm unit. "Bulldog, Hammer, Shark. Phoenix is compromised. Repeat, Phoenix is the mole." but the response that came back confirmed their worst fears. "Ghost, this is Shark," Williams reported. "Phoenix just opened fire on our position. Hammers down and bulldogs pinned behind cover." Marcus could hear the sound of automatic weapons fire through the comm as their own teammate turned his weapons on his brothers. "Reaper, we need to get back to the pen," Marcus said, but Petrov shook his head. "It's too late for that, Master Chief. Chen has already signaled for backup. This facility will be swarming with Spetsnaz in 5 minutes. "Then what do you suggest?" Petrov pulled out a data storage device. "I've been collecting evidence of this conspiracy for 2 years. Names, dates, financial transactions, everything you need to expose the traitors in your government. But I need your help to get it back to America." Marcus stared at the device, understanding the impossible choice he was being asked to make. He could try to save his remaining teammates and probably die in the process, or he could secure the evidence that would expose the conspiracy and let his brothers die. "There's a third option," Danny said quietly. Marcus looked at his best friend, seeing the same tactical calculation in Danny's eyes that he was making in his own mind. "We split up," Danny continued. "You take the evidence and extract through the underwater tunnel system. I'll go back for the team." "Negative, Reaper. We go together or not at all." But Danny was already moving toward the door. "Ghost, one of us needs to get this evidence home, and one of us needs to try to save Rodriguez and Williams." Marcus grabbed his friend's arm. "Danny, don't do this." Danny looked back with a sad smile. "You know it's the only way, brother. Get that evidence to the right people. Make sure our deaths mean something." And with that, Petty Officer First Class Danny Reaper Morrison disappeared into the corridor, heading back towards certain death to save his teammates. Marcus stood alone in the laboratory with Colonel Petrov, holding evidence that could bring down the most dangerous conspiracy in American military history. But the price of that evidence was the life of his best friend. "Master Chief," Petrov said quietly, "we need to move. The extraction tunnel is this way." Marcus took one last look at the door where Danny had disappeared, then followed Petrov deeper into Building 7. Behind them, the sound of gunfire echoed through the facility as Danny Morrison fought his way back to save his brothers. It was the last time Marcus would ever see his best friend alive. But what Marcus didn't know was that Danny's sacrifice would uncover an even deeper betrayal, one that reached all the way to the highest levels of the American government and would haunt Marcus for the next 40 years. The extraction tunnel beneath Building 7 was a relic of Stalin-era paranoia, a flooded concrete passage that connected the research facility to an abandoned submarine pen 3 miles away. Marcus followed Colonel Petrov through the chest-deep water, the evidence of the Pentagon conspiracy sealed in a waterproof case strapped to his back. But every step away from his teammates felt like a betrayal of everything he'd sworn to uphold. "Master Chief," Petrov whispered as they waded through the tunnel, "there's something else you need to know about this conspiracy." Marcus kept his weapon ready, scanning the darkness ahead. "What?" "The man who ordered your deaths. He's not just some Pentagon bureaucrat. He's someone you know personally." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. In 28 years of service, he'd worked directly with dozens of high-ranking officials. The idea that one of them had personally ordered his execution was almost incomprehensible. "Who?" Marcus demanded. But before Petrov could answer, the tunnel erupted with gunfire. Spetsnaz combat divers had entered the tunnel from both ends, trapping Marcus and Petrov in a deadly crossfire. The narrow concrete passage became a killing zone as automatic weapons fire echoed off the walls. "Down!" Marcus shouted, pulling Petrov behind a concrete support pillar. But the Soviet special forces weren't trying to capture them, they were trying to kill them both. "Colonel," Marcus realized, "your own people want you dead too." Petrov nodded grimly as bullets chipped concrete around their position. "The conspiracy goes deeper than just your Pentagon, Master Chief. There are people in Moscow who profit from this arrangement as well." Marcus counted muzzle flashes in the darkness. At least 8 Spetsnaz operators, armed with underwater assault rifles and moving in coordinated fire teams. Professional soldiers who knew exactly how to clear a tunnel. "How much ammunition do you have?" Marcus asked. 2 magazines, Petrov replied. Marcus checked his own gear. "Same here. We need to move before they bring up heavier weapons." But as they prepared to fight their way out, Marcus's comm unit crackled with a transmission that stopped his heart. "Ghost, this is Reaper." Danny's voice was strained, punctuated by the sound of gunfire. "I've got Rodriguez and Williams, but we're pinned down in the submarine pen. Danny, what's your status?" "Phoenix is dead. Bulldog put 3 rounds center mass when he turned on us. But we've got bigger problems. There's a whole company of Spetsnaz moving on our position." Marcus felt relief and terror in equal measure. His teammates were alive, but they were trapped with no way out. "Reaper, can you reach the extraction point?" Danny's laugh was bitter. "Negative, Ghost. The SDV is destroyed, and the pen is crawling with hostiles. We're going to make our stand here." Marcus closed his eyes, understanding what his best friend was telling him. Danny, Rodriguez, and Williams were going to fight to the death to buy Marcus time to escape with the evidence. "Danny, there has to be another way." "There is no other way, brother. Get that evidence home. Make sure the families know we didn't die for nothing." The transmission ended with the sound of explosions as Danny's team began their final battle. Marcus felt something break inside his chest. A bond forged over 15 years of brotherhood, shattered by the betrayal of men who had never worn a uniform or faced enemy fire. But Petrov was right about one thing. Someone had to survive to expose the truth. "Master Chief," Petrov urged, "we have to move now." Marcus armed a fragmentation grenade and threw it toward the Spetsnaz positions. The explosion in the confined tunnel was deafening, temporarily stunning the Soviet operators and giving Marcus and Petrov a chance to advance. They fought their way through the tunnel in a running firefight, using the concrete support pillars for cover as they moved toward the exit. Marcus's training took over: controlled bursts, tactical movement, efficient use of ammunition. But every shot he fired felt like another step away from his dying teammates. The tunnel exit led to an abandoned submarine pen carved into the Arctic coastline. The facility had been built in the 1950s and abandoned when larger submarines made it obsolete. Now it served as a perfect extraction point for covert operations. "There," Petrov pointed to a small boat hidden beneath a camouflaged tarp. "That will get us to international waters." But as they approached the boat, Marcus spotted movement in the shadows around the pen. More Spetsnaz operators, positioned to prevent their escape. "Colonel, we're surrounded." Petrov checked his weapon. "Then we fight our way out." Marcus was about to respond when his comm unit activated with an emergency transmission. But the voice that came through wasn't Danny's. It was Chen's. "Ghost, this is Phoenix. I know you can hear me." Marcus felt rage building in his chest. "You traitorous piece of shit." Chen's laugh was cold. "You still don't understand, do you? This isn't about money or ideology. This is about survival." "Explain." "The Pentagon conspiracy. It's not just about selling weapons technology. It's about covering up something much bigger, something that could destroy the entire military command structure if it ever came to light." Marcus exchanged glances with Petrov. "What are you talking about?" "Operation Neptune's Shadow isn't the first mission like this, Ghost. There have been dozens of others over the past decade. SEAL teams, Delta Force, Marine Recon, all sent on suicide missions to eliminate witnesses and cover up evidence." The revelation hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. "How many?" "Hundreds of operators, Ghost, all killed to protect a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of government." Marcus felt his world crashing down around him. "Who's running it?" Chen's answer destroyed everything Marcus thought he knew about honor and duty. "Admiral James Morrison, Joint Chiefs of Staff. Danny's father." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Admiral Morrison had been Danny's hero, the reason he'd joined the Navy in the first place. The idea that Danny's own father had ordered his death was beyond comprehension. "You're lying," Marcus whispered. "Check the evidence Petrov gave you, Ghost. Admiral Morrison's signature is on every classified sale for the past 5 years. He's been using his own son's SEAL team to eliminate anyone who got too close to the truth." Marcus looked at the waterproof case containing the evidence, understanding now why Petrov had been so insistent about getting it to America. It wasn't just about exposing a conspiracy, it was about exposing the man who had betrayed his own son. But Chen wasn't finished. "Danny doesn't know, Ghost. He's fighting to save his teammates, not knowing that his own father ordered their deaths. Are you going to tell him?" Marcus grabbed his comm unit. "Reaper, do you copy?" Danny's voice came back immediately, strained but determined. "Copy, Ghost. We're still in the fight." Marcus stared at the comm unit, knowing that the next words out of his mouth would destroy his best friend's world. But Danny deserved to know the truth. "Reaper, there's something you need to know about this mission." "Can it wait, Ghost? We're kind of busy dying over here." Marcus closed his eyes. "Your father, Admiral Morrison, he's the one who ordered this mission." The silence on the comm was deafening. When Danny finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "Say again, Ghost. Your father is the head of the conspiracy. He sent us here to die." The sound that came through the comm was something Marcus had never heard before, the sound of a man's faith being destroyed in real time. "Danny," Marcus called. When Danny's voice came back, it was different, colder, harder. "Copy that, Ghost. Message received." The transmission ended, leaving Marcus alone with the terrible knowledge of what he'd just done. Petrov touched Marcus's arm. "Master Chief, we need to move. The Spetsnaz are closing in." Marcus looked around the abandoned submarine pen, calculating their chances of escape. The boat was their only option, but reaching it would require fighting through at least a dozen Soviet Special Forces operators. "Colonel, what are the odds we make it out of here alive?" Petrov's smile was grim. "About the same as your teammates surviving in that submarine pen." Marcus understood. They were all going to die tonight. The only question was whether the evidence of the conspiracy would die with them. But as they prepared for their final battle, Marcus's comm unit crackled with one last transmission from Danny Morrison. "Ghost, this is Reaper. I've got one more favor to ask." "Anything, brother." "When you get home, tell my mother that I died believing in something. Don't tell her the truth about my father. Let her keep her illusions." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. "Danny, and Ghost, kill that son of a bitch for me." The transmission ended with the sound of a massive explosion as Danny Morrison detonated every piece of explosive equipment in the submarine pen, taking himself and a company of Spetsnaz operators with him. Marcus stood in the darkness of the abandoned facility, holding evidence that could bring down the most powerful conspiracy in American history. But the price of that evidence was the life of the best man he'd ever known. A man who had died, not knowing that his own father had betrayed him. Now Marcus had to decide. Was exposing the truth worth surviving when all his brothers had died? The answer would haunt him for the next 40 years. Marcus made it back to American waters 43 hours later, alone in a stolen Soviet patrol boat with Colonel Petrov's body in the stern and evidence of the largest military conspiracy in U.S. history sealed in a waterproof case. But when he reached the USS Pittsburgh's rendezvous point, he found something that confirmed his worst fears. The submarine was gone, and waiting for him instead was Admiral James Morrison himself. The destroyer USS Kidd sat in international waters like a steel monument to betrayal. Marcus could see Admiral Morrison standing on the bridge wing, watching through binoculars as Marcus approached in the damaged Soviet boat. Even from a distance, Marcus could see the family resemblance. Danny had inherited his father's jawline and his sense of duty, but only one of them had inherited his honor. "Master Chief Kellerman," Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. "Bring your vessel alongside. Prepare to be boarded." Marcus stared at the destroyer, understanding that he was looking at his own execution. Admiral Morrison couldn't afford to let him live, not with the evidence he carried. But Marcus had spent the last 40 hours planning for this moment. "Admiral," Marcus replied, "I have something that belongs to you." "I'm sure you do, Master Chief. Come aboard, and we'll discuss it." But Marcus had no intention of boarding that destroyer alive. Instead, Marcus activated the emergency beacon hidden in his gear, a device that would transmit his exact coordinates to every intelligence agency in the U.S. government. If Admiral Morrison wanted to kill him, he'd have to do it in front of witnesses. "Admiral, before I come aboard, I think you should know that your son died believing you were a hero." The silence on the radio stretched for long seconds. When Admiral Morrison finally responded, his voice carried the weight of a man who had sold his soul for power. "Danny was a good soldier, Master Chief. He died serving his country. He died because you ordered his execution. He died because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, just like you are now." Marcus looked at the evidence case beside him. thinking about Danny's final words. His best friend had asked him to kill the man responsible for this betrayal, but Marcus had a better idea. He was going to destroy Admiral Morrison's entire conspiracy. "Admiral, I'm transmitting something to you now." Marcus activated a portable radio transmitter and began broadcasting the recorded conversations between Admiral Morrison and his Soviet contacts. The evidence that Colonel Petrov had died protecting began flowing across every military communication channel in the North Atlantic. "You son of a bitch," Admiral Morrison snarled over the radio. "That's just the beginning, Admiral. I've got financial records, communication logs, and the names of every Pentagon official involved in your operation. And in about 10 minutes, every intelligence agency in Washington is going to have copies." But Admiral Morrison's response revealed the true scope of his power. "Master Chief, you're making a serious mistake. This conspiracy goes deeper than you understand. There are people in Washington who will do anything to protect it. Then let them try. They already have. Check your 6, Master Chief." Marcus turned to see 3 more destroyers approaching from different directions, their guns trained on his position. Admiral Morrison hadn't just brought one ship. He'd brought an entire task force. "You see, Master Chief, sometimes the only way to protect national security is to eliminate the threats to it. Your transmission has been jammed, your evidence will be destroyed, and you'll be listed as killed in action during a classified operation." Marcus realized he was looking at the full extent of Admiral Morrison's reach. The man had enough power to deploy U.S. Navy warships for a personal assassination. The conspiracy wasn't just about selling weapons, it was about controlling the entire military command structure. But Marcus had one final card to play. "Admiral, there's something else you should know about your son's death." "What's that, Master Chief?" "He figured out the truth before he died. He knew you were the one who betrayed him." The lie hit Admiral Morrison like a physical blow. Marcus could hear the pain in the older man's voice when he responded. "That's impossible. Danny died in the explosion. He lived long enough to understand what you'd done to him. His last words were about you, Admiral. He said to tell you that he forgave you." It was the cruelest lie Marcus had ever told, but it was also the most necessary. He could hear Admiral Morrison breaking down over the radio, the weight of his son's imagined forgiveness destroying him more effectively than any weapon. "Danny, my God, what have I done? You killed your own son for money, Admiral. You sent him to die to protect your conspiracy." But Admiral Morrison's breakdown was interrupted by an unexpected voice on the radio. "All stations, this is Rear Admiral Sarah Chen, Naval Intelligence. Stand down immediately." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Chen, Tommy Chen's mother. The communications specialist who had betrayed them had been working for his own mother, a high-ranking intelligence officer. "Admiral Chen," Morrison replied, "this is a classified operation. You have no authority here." "Admiral Morrison, I'm relieving you of command under Article 88 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You are under arrest for treason, conspiracy, and the murder of American servicemen." Marcus watched in amazement as Admiral Chen's ship moved between him and Morrison's task force. But the biggest surprise came when Admiral Chen's voice addressed him directly. "Master Chief Kellerman, this is Admiral Chen. My son Tommy has been working undercover for Naval Intelligence for the past 18 months. His mission was to infiltrate Admiral Morrison's conspiracy and gather evidence." The revelation hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. Chen hadn't been a traitor. He'd been a deep-cover operative working to expose the conspiracy from within. "Admiral, your son is dead. He was killed in the submarine pen." "I know, Master Chief. Tommy knew the risks when he accepted the mission. His sacrifice has given us everything we need to bring down this conspiracy." Marcus looked at the evidence case, understanding now that Tommy Chen had died protecting the same truth that Marcus was carrying. The young communications specialist had been a hero, not a traitor. But Admiral Morrison wasn't finished fighting. "Admiral Chen, you're making a mistake. This conspiracy has protection at the highest levels of government. If you move against us, you'll be destroyed." "Admiral Morrison, the President of the United States is currently reviewing the evidence your son died protecting. Your conspiracy is finished." Marcus watched as Admiral Morrison's destroyer began to turn away, the other ships in his task force following suit. The man who had ordered the deaths of hundreds of American servicemen was finally facing justice. But the cost had been devastating. Over the next 6 months, the investigation into Admiral Morrison's conspiracy would uncover the largest intelligence betrayal in American history. 47 Pentagon officials would be arrested, including 3 generals and 2 admirals. The financial network that had been selling American military secrets would be dismantled, with assets worth over $2 billion recovered. But none of that would bring back Danny Morrison, Tommy Chen, or the hundreds of other operators who had died protecting a lie. Marcus testified before Congress in closed session, his identity protected by the highest levels of classification. He told them about Operation Neptune's shadow, about the betrayal in the submarine pen, and about watching his best friend die believing his father was a hero. But he never told them the truth about Danny's final moments, that Danny had died knowing exactly who had betrayed him, and that his last words had been a promise to haunt his father's dreams forever. Some secrets were too painful to share, even with Congress. Admiral Morrison was sentenced to life in prison without parole, but he died of a heart attack 6 months into his sentence. The official cause was cardiac arrest, but Marcus knew the truth. The man had died of guilt, haunted by the imagined forgiveness of the son he had murdered. Tommy Chen was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross, the citation reading simply, "For extraordinary heroism in the performance of duty while serving in a classified capacity." His mother kept the medal on her desk for the rest of her career, a reminder of the price of honor. And Marcus returned to active duty, serving another 12 years before retiring with full honors. But he never spoke about Operation Neptune's shadow, not even to his wife. The mission remained classified at the highest levels, the truth buried in files that would never see daylight. Until now. 40 years later, sitting in a hospital bed with 6 weeks to live, Marcus finally breaks his silence. The evidence he carried out of that Soviet submarine pen had exposed the conspiracy, but it had never told the complete story of the men who died protecting it. Danny Morrison was the best man I ever knew. Marcus whispers into the recorder. He died believing in something bigger than himself, even when that something betrayed him. Tommy Chen sacrificed everything to expose the truth, knowing he would never live to see justice done. Marcus pauses, looking out the hospital window at the San Diego skyline. Somewhere in this city, there are families who still don't know the truth about how their sons died. They deserve to know that their boys were heroes, not victims. The Pentagon will try to suppress this recording, Marcus continues. They'll claim it's classified, that releasing it would damage national security. But the only thing it will damage is their ability to cover up the truth. Marcus reaches over and stops the recording, then makes a phone call to a journalist he's been watching for years, someone with the courage to tell the story that the government doesn't want told, because some truths are too important to die with the men who lived them. And some promises, like the one Marcus made to Danny Morrison in a Soviet submarine pen 40 years ago, can only be kept by breaking the silence that has protected the guilty for far too long. The truth about Operation Neptune's shadow is finally coming home.